Seriously? They sent us a medic to run point on comms triage? What's she gonna do? Put a band-aid on the server rack. The crowd of young, cocky rangers, wired for the high-stakes simulation, let out a wave of dismissive snickers. The air in the darkened command center, thick with the hum of electronics and the scent of stale coffee, crackled with their arrogant confidence. Master Sergeant Cole, the instructor whose voice dripped with condescension, gestured with a contemptuous flick of his wrist toward the woman at the end of the console. Sergeant Eva Rostova didn't flinch. She didn't look up. Her eyes, calm and gray as a winter sea, remained fixed on the primary monitor of the MSAT, the Mobile Simulation Command Terminal. Her posture was a study in stillness, a stark contrast to the restless energy of the operators around her. From the blacked-out observation deck above, Colonel Madsen leaned forward, his own reflection a ghost in the glass. His eyes, however, narrowed not on the glowing screens, but on the way her left hand rested beside her keyboard, fingers slightly curled, perfectly still, a posture of profound and patient readiness he hadn't seen in a decade. It was the stance of a predator, not a medic. If you believe that true strength doesn't need to announce itself, type silence in the comments below. Master Sergeant Cole, enjoying his audience, continued his performance. Look at her, boys. Taking notes in her little green diary. What's it say? Dear Diary, today the big scary rangers made me feel small. Don't worry, Sergeant. He boomed, ensuring everyone could hear. We'll call you if someone gets a paper cut. Until then, just try to keep up. He was the gatekeeper of this elite world, and in his eyes, she was an outsider, a support staffer accidentally wandering into the Coliseum. Rostova's uniform was standard issue, devoid of the custom patches and high-speed flair the Rangers favored. Her hair was pulled back in a severe regulation bun. She was unremarkable by design, a ghost in the machine. Her silence in response to his taunts was a vacuum, pulling all the tension in the room toward her. It wasn't the silence of submission. It was a wall of pure, professional detachment. With a quiet click of her pen, a sound that cut sharply through the low murmur, she made a small, intricate notation in her worn, government-issue notebook. She drew a symbol in the margin of the page, a small, seven-pointed star inside a circle, a sigil of a ghost unit, a marker for a problem she had already identified before anyone else in the room even knew it was about to exist. The simulation began. Operation Iron Serpent is a go, Cole announced, his voice regaining its authoritative bark. On the main screen, a sprawling digital metropolis materialized. The mission was a Tier 1 hostage rescue, complex and unforgiving. The Ranger team's avatars moved with fluid precision, clearing buildings, neutralizing AI hostiles. For 15 minutes, everything ran like clockwork. Cole was beaming, basking in the success of his trainees. Then it happened. A flicker on a secondary monitor. A stream of corrupted data. A warning light no one had ever seen before glowed amber. A neural cascade failure in the simulation's AI director caused every enemy unit to go off script, abandoning their programmed patrol routes. They began to think, to adapt, to coordinate with a terrifying, inhuman intelligence. They set complex ambushes, hacked the trainees' comms with static, and began systematically dismantling the Ranger team's assault. Panic started to bleed through the headsets. They're everywhere. We've lost comms. Where did they come from? Cole's face went pale, his bravado instantly evaporating as he stared at the unfolding catastrophe. The entire multi-million-dollar exercise was spiraling into an unmitigated failure, and he was completely, utterly helpless. In the rising tide of chaos, one island of calm remained. Sergeant Rostova did not look up at the panicked faces or the failing screens. Her pen moved across the page of her notebook, not with frantic scribbling, but with the steady, deliberate grace of a master cartographer mapping a new and dangerous world. She sketched network pathways, fire control solutions, and tactical choke points, her eyes darting between the corrupted data streams and her own evolving diagram. She was not taking notes. She was dissecting the chaos and rewriting the rules of the engagement. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the noise like a scalpel. Technician, reroute auxiliary power from environmental controls to comms relay 4. Isolate the AI director's heuristic processor at the root. Manually input these fire mission coordinates for the drone support. She slid the notebook across the console to a stunned junior officer. It was not a suggestion. It was a diagnosis and a prescription delivered in one fluid, authoritative motion. The officer, seeing the sheer, undeniable logic in her handwritten code and the terrifying elegance of her tactical map, obeyed without question or hesitation. A moment later, the screens flickered. The static in the headsets vanished. A perfectly timed drone strike, guided by her coordinates, eliminated the enemy command node. The trainees, given a new, clear path to the objective, completed their mission flawlessly. Then, a profound, echoing silence filled the command center, heavier than any explosion. The simulation ended. The score screen flashed a single, impossible phrase: flawless execution. The trainees were cheering in their headsets, ecstatic and confused, but in the control room, no one moved. Everyone, from the junior technicians to the seasoned instructors, stared at the medic, who was calmly closing her small green notebook as if she had just finished a grocery list. Master Sergeant Cole stood frozen, his mouth slightly agape, his face a mask of shattered arrogance and pure disbelief. "How?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "How did you possibly know to do that?" Before anyone could answer, the heavy pneumatic door to the observation deck hissed open. Colonel Madsen walked onto the command floor, his boots making sharp, deliberate sounds on the polished concrete. He didn't look at Cole. He didn't look at the screens broadcasting the mission's success. His eyes were fixed solely on Rostova. He walked directly to her station, his presence commanding absolute silence. "Sergeant," he said, his voice low and imbued with a strange, almost reverent tone. "May I see your notebook?" Eva simply looked at him, her gray eyes unreadable, and handed it over. The colonel opened it, his experienced gaze scanning pages filled not with medical acronyms, but with intricate network architecture, enemy doctrinal templates, and handwritten algorithms for predictive targeting in compromised digital environments. He stopped on one page, his index finger gently tracing the small, seven-pointed star she had drawn earlier. The colonel closed the notebook softly, as if handling a sacred artifact. He held it for a moment, then looked up, his gaze sweeping across the entire room, landing finally and heavily on Master Sergeant Cole. For the past hour, the colonel's voice was dangerously calm, carrying the unmistakable weight of command. "You have all been operating under a series of profound assumptions. An assumption about rank, an assumption about a soldier's specialty, an assumption about what competence looks like." He let the words hang in the air, each one a quiet indictment. He turned to his aide. "Pull up Sergeant Eva Rostova's full service record. Authorization code Madsen, Omega, 7. Unredact everything." The aide's fingers flew across a keyboard, and Rostova's file appeared on the main screen. The room drew a collective, sharp breath. The list of her accomplishments scrolled down the screen, a litany of impossible achievements. Unit, 7th Special Operations Application Group, classified. Nickname, Shadow 7. Role, Lead Technical Surveillance and Counter-Surveillance Analyst. Field Operations, 48 classified deployments. Citations, Distinguished Service Cross. Silver Star. Bronze Star with V for Valor. The list went on and on. "Master Sergeant Cole," the colonel said, his voice now like ice. "You asked her if she was going to put a Band-Aid on a server. Sergeant Rostova designed the very counterinsurgency AI you are using for this training exercise. She wrote the book on it. Literally." He then turned back to Rostova, his expression softening into one of immense respect. He stood ramrod straight, brought his hand up in a slow, perfect salute, and said, "Thank you for your assistance, Sergeant. It is an honor to have you on this post." The story didn't just walk out of the simulation center. It sprinted. It became instant legend, moving through the digital ether of base networks and the analog ether of whispered conversations in mess halls and barracks. They didn't call it Operation Iron Serpent anymore. They called it the Medic's Gambit. Young rangers who had snickered at her now spoke her name with a hushed, reverential awe. They talked about the quiet sergeant who saw the entire battle space in a cheap notebook, who saw the solution before anyone else even understood the problem. They spoke in low tones about the colonel's salute, a gesture of respect so profound from a man so revered that it had humbled an entire command. Master Sergeant Cole was not seen on the training floor for 2 days. When he returned, the arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet, haunted humility. He found Rostova in the motor pool, where she was performing routine inventory on an ambulance, her movements just as methodical and precise as they had been in the command center. He stood before her, head slightly bowed. "Sergeant," he said, his voice thick with a shame that was genuine and deep. "I was arrogant. I was ignorant. And I was wrong. I apologize." Eva Rostova simply looked up from her checklist, her gray eyes holding no malice, no triumph, only a calm assessment. She just nodded once. "Understood, Master Sergeant. We all have a mission. Focus on yours." It was not forgiveness. It was a directive, a final lesson in quiet competence delivered without a single wasted word. The change on the base was immediate and palpable. That small, green, government-issue notebook became an unlikely symbol of a new kind of wisdom. Young soldiers, rangers, and support staff alike started carrying them, not as a trend, but as a tangible reminder. A reminder that the loudest voice in the room is rarely the most important. A reminder that competence is a language spoken through action, not volume, and that respect is earned in the silent execution of one's duty. Colonel Madsen, true to his character, formalized the lesson. He ordered a full after-action report on the failed simulation. Eva's handwritten notes were scanned, digitized, and incorporated into the command's training curriculum as the Rostova Protocol, a new, mandatory module on adaptive problem-solving under catastrophic system failure. The specific terminal where she had worked, Terminal 7, was marked with a small, simple brass plaque. It didn't bear her name. It just had the date of the simulation and a small, engraved 7-pointed star. It was a quiet monument to a quiet professional, a secret known only to those who were there, and those who were taught the legend. The trainees who had been in that simulation were forever changed. They stopped looking for the swagger and the boasts. They started looking for the quiet ones. They looked for the steady hands, the calm eyes, the people who brought a notebook to a gunfight and knew precisely how to win with it. Years passed. Colonel Madsen retired, his farewell speech famously including the line, "Judge a soldier by the content of their competence, not the volume of their voice." Master Sergeant Cole became one of the most respected instructors in the Ranger program, known for his opening day mantra. Assumptions are a landmine you place in your own path. Check your facts, then check the soldier next to you, because you have no idea what legend they might be. And Sergeant Eva Rostova? She eventually moved on to another assignment, another quiet corner of the global chessboard where her unique and formidable skills were needed. She left behind no statues, no grand farewells, no portraits on a wall of heroes. Her legacy was not carved in stone. It was woven into the very DNA of the institution she had so profoundly impacted. New classes of operators would hear the story of the medic who single-handedly saved the Iron Serpent simulation. They would study the Rostova Protocol, trying to decipher the elegant, lethal logic of her handwritten notes. Her story became a parable, a teaching tool about the vast difference between perceived value and actual worth. It was a lesson that the most critical asset on any team might not be the strongest, or the fastest, or the loudest. It might just be the quietest person in the room, the one everyone else overlooked. True legacy isn't about the medals on a uniform or the rank on a collar. It is a ripple effect of excellence, a standard of competence that inspires others to be better, to look deeper, and to value substance over style. It's the quiet professional who proves that respect is not a right to be demanded, but a result to be earned through silent, undeniable skill. Eva Rostova didn't ask for respect. She commanded it through sheer, unassailable competence, leaving behind a lesson more powerful than any weapon, that the greatest strength is the one that doesn't need to be announced. It simply needs to be present when the moment of crisis arrives. Her silence was not emptiness. It was the calm at the center of the storm, the quiet confidence of someone who had already won the battle before it ever began, proving that true worth is measured not in words spoken, but in problems solved and missions accomplished. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent discipline defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.